The first thing I did when it was done is I went up to Rob's agent and said, how can I have Rob come and talk to our people? How can I have him in front of my group? Because I know the effect it will have on them like it had on me.
And he goes, you know what, man? He goes, I'm not even supposed to be flying this week. I go, well, what are you doing? He goes, I switched flight weeks with my best friend. He goes, I'm surprising my wife. I'm taking her to London next week for our anniversary. I said, man, how are you going to pull that off? I said, if my wife knew that we were going to London, she would have to shop and pack for 6 months. He goes, no. He goes, my wife's a flight attendant as well. And he goes, when you're in this industry, he said, you always have a bag packed and you learn how to travel very light. I get that, but you're really going to be able to pull off the surprise? He goes, oh, yeah. He goes, a couple weeks ago, I took her down and I bought her a baby grand piano. And then last week, we went drive by the Lexus dealership. She thinks she's getting a new car, too. I'm looking at this guy, I'm thinking, I pray to God my wife never meets this guy. He's a good-looking guy, successful, rich. He's taking his wife to London for their anniversary, and he's masquerading it with a piano and a new car? I don't stand a chance. So pretty soon we started talking about our kids, and I have 2 kids, my daughter Abigail and my son John. At the time, they were both very, very tiny. Both of them were in diapers, so I didn't have any dance stories or basketball stories. But he started talking about his 15-year-old son, Matt. And up until this point, you could tell the man loved to fly. He was madly in love with his wife. But when he started talking about his 15-year-old son, you could just see the pride beam off of him. Talked about trips they've gone on, Boy Scouts, Pinewood Derbies, and all these things. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the type of dad that I want to be. Conversation drifted away a little bit, come back to kids a little bit later on. And he goes, you know, I really need to start spending some more time with my son. I said, I hear you, man. I said, I'm on an airplane every other week. Sometimes I'm gone for 2 weeks in a row. He goes, there's that. He said, but my son was recently diagnosed with an illness, and it's not going very well. Doctors aren't happy with the way the treatments are going, and the big picture just isn't real positive. He goes, fact is, when I planned this surprise trip for his mom, I sat him down, and I apologized to my son for being gone for 2 consecutive weeks. But he said, Matt, when I'm gone the next 2 weeks, I want you to think about where you want to go. Because when I get back, I want you and I to go on another trip. He goes, but Matt, I don't want you just to randomly pick a place. He goes, I want you to think about where you want to go with this in mind. Where do you want to go today as if your life were to end tomorrow? Jason said in typical Matt fashion, he didn't take the 2 weeks. He said, Dad, I don't need the 2 weeks. I know exactly what I want to do. I want to go to a NASCAR race and I want to meet Jeff Gordon. And I knew right then, sitting on the corner of this bed in my hotel room in New York City, that my new friend that I met the night before, Jason Dahl, was no longer with us. After a couple days, we realized that we weren't going to be flying and that nobody was going to be flying anytime soon. So my travel department arranged for me to get a rental car out of Manchester, New Hampshire. So got a ride up there and got my rental car, and I called my wife and I promised her that I would be home before midnight the Saturday after 9/11. And after I was able to get out of the city, get away from what I was staring at and what I watched, I just really started thinking about the why and the why me. My mind went all the way back to 8 months prior to this. Why did my company let me run this promotion? Why couldn't I get rid of those last 2 tickets? Why did I have to go to the meeting in New York City? Why didn't one more person in Lincoln, Nebraska volunteer to get off the flight so I can keep my original schedule? Why did I talk to this guy in the airplane? Why did I offer him the tickets? Why did I see what I saw? The only thing I thought about coming from Manchester to Lincoln, Nebraska. Pulled into my driveway, I looked at the dashboard on the rental car and it said 11:57 p.m. Saturday. My first thought was, I finally kept a promise to my wife.
At one point, I thought, I'm going to have to go back to the room, straighten out my mascara. It really did. It took you from the humor to the sensitivity to the tragedy and back, and how do you turn what happened to Jeff into something that was so emotional and so positive and so rewarding, and not just for him, but for everybody.
I'm driving home 200 miles an hour singing Dreamweaver on the top of my lungs. I'm thinking my car would look fantastic with vanity plates that say Dreammaker. I get home, I don't sleep for 2 days. I'm so excited. Pretty typical guy, huh? Come to a really big conclusion in his life, zero thought behind it. That joke was for the ladies in the audience there. Over the years, I've defined and redefined the message that I did receive that day while I'm sitting there in my car in the parking lot. The message that I received that day is that my job for the rest of my life is to go out and tell everybody and teach everybody that all of us have the ability to make other people's dreams come true before it's too late. I'm going to walk you through how to do this. I'm going to tell you the secret to it, and then I'm going to challenge you to do it. I want you to picture yourself sitting next to a loved one. When that person's on their deathbed and they have 24 hours left to live. What's your conversation going to be like with that person? It's going to be full of love, full of hope, full of compassion. You're going to be sharing stories with each other, telling secrets that you've been hiding from each other. And you might even get to the point where you ask the question. You have 24 hours left. What dream do you have? What do you still want to do? The reality of it is that with 24 hours left, there's probably not a lot that you can do. Now I want you to picture yourself sitting next to that same person, except this time you're sitting in your house, you're sitting on your couch in your living room, and you know for a fact that that person has 30 years left to live. What's your conversation going to be like with that person? It should be full of hope. It should be full of love, full of compassion. You should be telling each other stories and secrets. And you, most important, should be asking the question, what dream do you have? What do you want to do? I don't understand why we ask somebody their dying wish, but we don't ask the person who's sitting next to us right now or the person that we love the most what their dreams are.
I had no idea where we were going. It was phenomenal. I wish everybody could hear this.
Well, yes, of course he asked if there was someone that we had on our mind that we would like to see their dream come true. And even before he asked us to close our eyes and think about it for a minute, I had someone in mind. And of course, when he said, raise your hand if you've thought of someone, that was the most easiest thing. There are a number of people, but there's one in particular that I know when in the next 24 hours, I'm going to ask that question. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure it happens.
It's a challenge, but it's doable. You just have to make that investment.